What's going on, everybody? It's Alberto again, here for week 2 of Internship 1. This week we're doing assignment 2, and for this assignment we are working with a 25-year-old male who has quadriplegia, and we are going to teach this participant how to pass the ball in a game of quad rugby, or better known as wheelchair rugby. Hope you guys enjoy. This video, I'll of course be teaching the individual this skill remotely at the end of it, but I I am as well going to go over different barriers that could come in the way of this individual, both facility and environmentally wise, and different adaptive equipment that would essentially be used if we are conducting this activity in person. Plus, I will go over different accommodations that could be made for this individual to promote inclusivity throughout the activity. And as I did in the last video, I'll go over different community resources that could be used by both the individual and their family. As always, you should always be sure to check different barriers that could affect an individual's ability to be able to participate in activity, both within the facility that you're going to use and environmentally wise. Especially since we're dealing with an individual with quadriplegia, as with most individual quadriplegia, they usually use a wheelchair to get around. There can be several barriers that could affect the ease of access for this individual when trying to maneuver around a facility. In the case a facility does not have proper thresholds at all entrances and exits, it could be very difficult for an individual using a wheelchair to be able to enter and exit the facility at ease. Without thresholds, instead of creating sort of an incline, there's a little bump in between entrances and exits. So it's fairly difficult to be able to push your wheelchair over the entrance or exits with a little bump there, because the wheels of the chair could potentially get stuck and it would be hard to push over it. At times when I conducted a wheelchair simulation for another course where there was no thresholds, it was very difficult to be able to push it by myself. So I had the person who was recording me at the time have to push me into the part of the facility I was trying to enter. So at times an individual may be coming alone to be able to do this activity and may not have anyone there to give them the extra push to enter. So it's very important as an activity leader or therapist to be able to make sure that the facility has proper thresholds across all their entrances and exits to promote ease of access for an individual using a wheelchair. Another barrier that should be noted would be bumps on pavement. All pavement should be flat surface or resurfaced if bumps occur, to prevent any chance of someone using a wheelchair from tipping over or hitting the bump and potentially falling out of their chair, especially since quad rugby is usually played on a basketball court. Assuming that there may be a time that you have to use an outdoor court to be able to conduct the activity, you should always make sure that the outdoor court has clean pavement, clean surface, no bumps or anything on it, to protect the players, to prevent any injuries from occurring in the case that they accidentally run over one of these bumps and tip over. The area of both bathrooms and locker rooms could also be another barrier that could affect an individual with quadriplegia, in the case that the rooms are not big enough to fit a wheelchair in, and that they may not have the proper stall for an individual with a disability within their bathrooms or locker room. So that's another thing, as a recreational therapist or a activity leader, you should check before trying to rent out a facility to make sure the participant is as comfortable as possible if they need to use these areas. Stairs could pose as a barrier too, since an individual using a wheelchair would not be able to get up them. There should be elevators throughout the facility to promote ease of access for this individual to be able to get up to other levels within the facility, if the facility is more than one level. Another way to resolve the barrier of stairs would be having proper wheelchair ramps available to individuals using wheelchairs to be able to use, since they may not be able to get upstairs. These ramps allow ease of access for the individual to be able to enter the facility at ease. The ramp should be at the proper incline that the ADA requires as well. The different height of doorknobs and the ability for a door to stay open, and the width of the door as well, could be another barrier that could affect an individual using a wheelchair from trying to get around the facility. If the doorknob is not high enough or low enough for them, they may not be able to reach it and open the door. So if that's the case, the facility should also have push buttons, automatic push buttons for people with disabilities to be able to push the button and the door to open long enough for the individual to enter. And the door should be very easy to open if those push buttons are not provided, and stay open long enough for the individual to be able to enter and exit without the door closing on them. Since quad rugby is a very physical sport, there are several different types of adaptive equipment that are needed to be able to perform this activity, and I am going to go over those now. Main essential adaptive equipment that's needed for this activity would be in athletic wheelchairs. These wheelchairs have their wheels slanted at an angle to promote faster speeds when trying to maneuver around the court while playing quad rugby or even wheelchair basketball. They usually use the same type of chair as well as wheelchair tennis. These chairs usually range between $500 to $10,000 or even more, depending on what the participant wants to be added onto their chairs. Since these chairs are very, very expensive, there are several different funds that can sponsor an individual who is in need of an athletic wheelchair and provide it for them. Or there are different parks and recreation departments that provide wheelchairs for the individuals to use and to borrow when trying to practice and play games. These funds and park and recreation departments play a huge role in promoting inclusivity as well by providing these athletic wheelchairs to individuals with quadriplegia or any type of spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, amputation, to be able to give these chairs out and allow these individuals to participate in these activities to the fullest of their abilities and be able to enjoy them. This quad rugby is very physical as well. It is recommended for players to wear different types of arm sleeves and padding to protect them from getting any cuts and bruises throughout the game, as well as wearing gloves to also protect their hands in case they get caught between another player's wheels, and to be able to catch the ball better as well. Players do need to have straps when in their wheelchair, so the straps go over the individual's hips more or less, and it's kind of like a seat belt that holds the player in place in the case that they get knocked over by any chance, so the player won't physically fall out of the chair and potentially injure themselves while playing. So these straps are necessary to have to be able to participate. They range between $50 to $70, and they can usually be asked for as an add-on within the chair, as I stated before, because certain players like certain things specifically made for their chairs. Another equipment that I forgot to go over as well would be having a ball available for the participants to use, which the ball could essentially be a standardized rugby ball, a round one, or you could use a volleyball. Both work fine. Just make sure it has the proper amount of air in it. There are several different ways to accommodate this activity for an individual with quadriplegia to be able to feel included throughout the activity and perform it at the best level that they can. So the goal of inclusivity is to try to promote and provide the best opportunities for all individuals within an activity to be able to perform at their highest potential and be able to enjoy it the best they can. So the following accommodations I'm going to speak about, I feel creates an environment of inclusivity while trying to perform an activity such as quad rugby for an individual with quadriplegia. In quad rugby, one of the rules is to be able to pass the ball. You can only have the ball in your hands for 10 seconds, or else you have to pass it up, or else you turn over the ball essentially, and you have 12 seconds to get past half court. So, one accommodation that I would make would probably increase the time it takes to pass the ball from 10 seconds and from passing half court, which is 12 seconds. In the case that the individual may not have much experience from using an athletic wheelchair or playing quad rugby at all. So these push-ups in time make the participant feel like they're able to complete the task at their own pace and not feel pressure to pass the ball within 10 seconds and potentially make a mistake that lowers your self-esteem and makes them feel bad. So kind of bending the rules a bit can help accommodate the individual and make them feel included throughout the activity. Plus, you could also use a smaller ball in the case that the individual's digits are very stiff and they're not able to grasp the ball completely and be able to pass it very well. I worked with an individual who had cerebral palsy when working with the Miami Heat Wheels, and they provided him a smaller ball because he couldn't grasp the ball completely. So using a smaller ball could also help the individual get stronger and be able to pass the ball better and maneuver around and get the ball where they want it to go. As the individual gets stronger and better at grasping the smaller ball, you can increase the ball size and to the point where they are able to use a standard ball throughout the regular games that you'll play with them. Making sure the barriers that I spoke about previously are also kept in mind and the facility's barrier free. That could also be an accommodation for an individual because it promotes ease of access both in and out of the facility, and it just makes it easier for them to feel an atmosphere where they can perform at their best. Air pumps should also be provided during the activity in the case that an individual wants to put more air in their tires if they feel that they're low. This accommodation is very important because it is a safety precaution as well. Because if the tires are too low, they could potentially pop and the participant could possibly tip over and injure themselves. I'll provide different community resources that could be useful for both the individual and their family. Foundations such as the Byron Wright Paralysis Foundation and the Woody Foundation provide funding to those with paralysis and spinal cord injuries. They raise funding through charitable efforts through events like golf tournaments to provide funds to different research projects that try to find a cure for paralysis and provide grants as well for students with paralysis for their education. National Wheelchair Sports Fund provides funding for programs and individuals to be able to obtain athletic wheelchairs to be able to participate in sports, not just wheelchair tennis, but rugby and basketball as well. The United Spinal Association is a group that supports independent living amongst individuals with quadriplegia. They are also an advocacy group promoting equal rights and opportunities for individuals with quadriplegia as well. They also have different support groups across the country, such as one in South Florida called the Broward Spinal Cord Injury Support Group, for individuals within the community to communicate with each other. So now I'm going to teach you how to pass a ball in a game of quad rugby. So when you get the ball, both your hands should be about equal distance apart towards the center of the ball. When you're going to attempt to pass, you should bring it to your chest and push out. Depending where you're releasing the pass from, as for example, if you're going overhead, it will make a much higher arc on the ball. Those are for much longer passes. If you're throwing on a straight line, it will be more of a straight plane pass. That's usually to pass it towards a person that's right next to you. And if you let the ball down lower, it's usually going to be a bounce pass, which is also could be a lead pass for someone to score a goal. At times, you should not make the pass directly to the person. Instead, you should lead the ball to them instead in order for them to be able to get the ball at ease and for you not to turn the ball over and give it back to the opponent. Now I'm going to go over some drills that you could do at home to improve your passing for when you actually start playing in the game of quad rugby. Due to the pandemic, we weren't able to get access to an actual athletic wheelchair, so instead we'll be using regular chairs, but it works the same way. In the following drill, you can either be seated in an athletic wheelchair or a normal wheelchair to perform it. In this drill, you'll be sitting still, throwing the ball off the wall, both straight ahead, overhand, and a bounce pass. The main goal of the drill is to try to hit the wall as precisely as possible so the ball can come back to you. As you get more comfortable doing the drill, you can move the chair farther back. The aim is to do between 5 to 10 reps 3 times of each pass. This drill here tries to perfect the lead pass on trying to make it as accurate and precise as possible when trying to throw it into a receiver's catching pocket or trying to lead them to the ball. It is important to implement all 3 passes in this drill, both bounce, throwing it overhead, and throwing it straight ahead. You can do it with a partner, whether they're sitting down in a wheelchair or regular chair or standing up. The main goal of it is to perfect your lead pass. Make sure to do 5 to 10 reps, 3 sets of them, and increase the distance as you get stronger and stronger throwing the ball. With this drill, you will be passing it to a person directly in front of you. This drill helps perfect your force when passing and your catching ability. Make sure to do all 3 types of passes: overhead, straight ahead, and bounce with both hands. As the sets go on, try to go further apart from each other so you can perfect your strength when passing as well. Your partner does not have to be seated for this drill. They could be standing, as long as you're working and perfecting your craft as you're doing it. Teach you how to properly pass the ball in a game called rugby, both overhead, straight ahead, and the bounce pass. I gave you several different drills that you can do at home, since at the moment we're social distancing due to the coronavirus pandemic. Hope you enjoyed the video.